How are you, everybody? Welcome to my lecture on the subject Tildik qarama-qatnas madaniyati bo'yicha practicum. Today with you, Mehribek Fakhilbek Qayratbekovich. So let's have a look to our syllabus. This is the second week of the study of the autumn term. According to the syllabus, we have to work on intercultural communication. So today's theme of the lesson is intercultural communication, and let me introduce you with the plan of the lesson. So during the lecture, I will give you introduction to intercultural communication, and you will learn today the concepts of culture and communication. Also, you will have a knowledge about cultural markers. And of course, we will observe effective communication. And at the end of the lesson, you will learn the model of culture, which is called iceberg model. So let's start our lecture by giving introduction to intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is a field of study that looks at how people from different cultural backgrounds communicate in similar and different ways among themselves, and how they endeavor to communicate across cultures. To the question how intercultural communication was started, we can say changes and advancements in economic relationships, political systems, and technological options began to break down old cultural barriers. Increasing pressure for universities across the world to incorporate intercultural and international understanding and knowledge into the education of the students. Business transformed from individual country capitalism to global capitalism. Thus, the study of cross-cultural communication was originally found within business and government, both seeking to expand globally. Cross-cultural communication thus refers to the communication between people who have differences in any one of the following: styles of working, age, nationality, ethnicity, race, gender, and etc. Cross-cultural communication can also refer to the attempts that are made to exchange, negotiate, and mediate cultural differences by means of language, gestures, and, of course, body language. It is how people belonging to different cultures communicate with each other. Each individual can practice culture at varying levels. There is the culture of the community he grows up. There is work culture at his workplace, and other cultures to which one becomes an active participant or slowly withdraws from. An individual is constantly confronted with the clash between his original culture and the majority culture that he or she is exposed to daily. Cultural clashes occur as a result of individuals believing their culture is better than others. Cross-cultural communication looks at how people from different cultural backgrounds strive to communicate, although it is more frequently referred to as intercultural communication. The main theories for intercultural communication are based on the observations of value differences or dissimilar dimensions among cultures, which have been reviewed above. Intercultural communication is directly related to socio-cultural anthropology, the holistic study of humanity. Anthropologists argue that culture and established areas of communication refers to the process of exchanging information, usually via a common system of symbols. Human beings have evolved a universal capacity to conceive of the world symbolically, to teach and learn such symbols socially, and to transform the world based on such symbols. The activity of understanding and adapting symbols can be defined as intercultural practice. Since cultural practices comprises the way people do different things in a given culture, this cultural practice is directly linked with knowledge and knowledge of the world, and from this tandem an unending list of variables and contexts intervene and determine the level of understanding and consequently the communication between cultures. Cross-cultural communication has been influenced by a variety of academic disciplines. It is necessary in order to avoid misunderstandings that can lead to conflicts between individuals or groups. Cross-cultural communication creates a feeling of trust and enables cooperation. The focus is on providing the right response rather than providing the right message. When two people of different cultures encounter each other, they not only have different cultural backgrounds, but their systems of turn-taking are also different. Cross-cultural communication will be more effective and easier if both the speakers have knowledge of the turn-talking or turn-taking system being used in the conversation. Now, dear participants of my lecture, I would like to demonstrate you a video to make our lecture more interesting, more attractive. The video is about intercultural communication, and during watching the video, please try to make a note and get more information about intercultural communication.
The world today is characterized by an ever-growing number of contacts, resulting in communication between people with different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. This communication takes place because of contacts with the areas of business, military cooperation, science, and education. In all these contacts, there is a communication which needs to be constructive as possible, without misunderstandings and breakdowns. There is, therefore, a need to explain the manner in which intercultural communication skills enable greater effectiveness in personal and professional life. So, what is intercultural communication? It refers to the effective communication between people, workers, and people of different cultural backgrounds. It also refers to communication between people whose culture perceptions and symbol systems were distinct enough to alter the communication event. An academic field of study which seeks to understand how people from different countries and culture behave and communicate and perceive the world around them. There are four elements of intercultural communication. Number one is the perception, which are the beliefs, values, attitudes, worldviews, and social organizations. Number two is the verbal processes. It is the ways in which cultures employ symbols to portray things and experiences. Number three is the nonverbal processes. It is shared thoughts and feelings of bodily behavior, time, and space. And lastly is the contextual elements, which are business, education and healthcare, tourism, and personal relationships. So why do we need to study intercultural communication? There are several reasons why we study intercultural communications, such as increases self-awareness. One of the most important reasons for studying intercultural communication is that it increases our awareness of our own culture, our cultural identity, and cultural background. It helps us to avoid ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a tendency to think that our culture is superior to other cultures. Number two is for demographic changes. The constant demographic shifts that countries and communities experience result to more immigrants, refugees, and undocumented individuals. Thirdly is for the workplace and economic globalization. To compete effectively in global market, we must understand how business and cultural practices are conducted in other countries. Next is for creative problem solving. According to research, we learn from people who are different than us from those who are similar to us. And lastly is for global and interpersonal respect.
Hope you have taken very useful information from our short video. So the next part of the lecture is the concepts of culture and communication. The term culture refers to the complex collection of knowledge, folklore, language, rules, rituals, habits, lifestyles, attitudes, beliefs, religions, and customs, and so on, etc. All social units develop a culture. Even in two-person relationship, a culture develops over time. In friendship and romantic relationships, for example, partners develop their own history, shared experiences, language patterns, rituals, habits, and customs that give that relationship a special character, a character that differentiates it in various ways from other relationships. Examples of this might include special dates, places, songs, or events that come to have a unique and important symbolic meaning for two individuals. Culture is a set of normals held by a group of people. The group of people may live in the same geographical place, and they may share the same nationality, ethnicity, or beliefs. Sir Edward Bernard Tiller, the well-known anthropologist, he defines the word culture as a complex which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. It is agreed that the symbolic interactions culture refers to a system of human meaning. And during the lifetime of human being, shared knowledge, beliefs, and values of members of society and may be passed on from generation to generation through the process of socialization. Culture itself may include aspects of social life like food, dress, dance, language, and languages can be verbal, non-verbal, natural, or constructed ones. Customs and traditions, norms, ideas, and beliefs are all aspects of culture.
So culture, norms, ideas.
Culture essentially speaks to a way of life shared by a group of people. Culture is dynamic. Past, present, and future times are the period of the culture living. When we talk about culture, we need to take into consideration the general organization of the society and how people relate to each other on a daily basis, the types of recreational activities readily accessible to the general public in spite of economic status, political norms, and education, women's integration and rule in the society, people's care for the elderly children, their fellow men, the environment, and animals. All of these come together to produce a unique culture of society. Cultural practices influence the daily lives at the conscious and subconscious levels on a daily basis every day. So, further, within culture, there may be subcultures and countercultures shared by groups of people who hold a similar social and economic subculture is a within and abroad. Mainstream culture people in this group have separate values, practices, and beliefs which differ from the popular culture. A subculture can coexist peacefully within the larger popular culture of given society. However, counterculture involves beliefs. Study of culture and sociology is very exciting and provides great insight into the modes of operation of people. So the material and non-material aspects of their social life is a summary. Culture is varied in its definition. Culture includes aspects of social life and culture is dynamic, changes from place to place and over time. Okay, the next part of our lecture dedicated to cultural markers. Cultural markers are the aspects of a culture that create a feeling of belonging and identity. They can apply to any culture, whether it is nationality, ethnicity, or even a corporate culture. A culture marker is a direction for the culture of the organization. It is similar to core values but more unique. There are three primary types of culture markers in a purposeful organization. The first one is the purpose the business organized around. The second, the values that guide how the organization achieves that purpose. And the third type of culture markers is day-to-day habits that members of the organization live out on the journey toward purpose. These purposes may be the most important. It is more than a mission statement. It is a sense that by being part of an organization, an individual is contributing to something larger than oneself. Identification with purpose confers belonging. Cultural markers are shared features such as language, common values in a cultural group. This helps define the group. For example, let's discuss about Islamic markers. The majority of people who are Islamic speak Arabic language. This is a cultural marker of Islamic people. This is an example of a shared feature. And also, we have a lot of Islamic markers. So, who keep praying, who keep read namaz. So, in front of you, you have a picture and you have Islamic markers. They give to the needy, read the Quran, make dua, follow the Sunnah, hold strong to Salat, say Bismillah. They are mostly patient, they are mostly try to be honest, they set a good example, and Islam teaches to love each other. So there are markers like respecting parents and praise and thank Allah. And also we can compare the Christianity markers. The majority of people in the United States who are Christian are also conservative. 57% of Republicans want Christianity made a national religion. They practice Christianity. Okay, from the word Christianity, we can easily imagine in front of us the church, the crest, the holy book, Bible, and also any other values or markers of Christianity like monks, popes, and so on. So this is how cultural groups are defined. Learning as much as possible about another language or culture will enhance your ability to communicate with others. When encountering someone who doesn't share your home language or culture, Talk to people who have interacted with members of that culture or observe the similarities and differences with a respectful eye. Concentrate on learning something about the culture's history and social structures, like values, customs, traditions, religions, and so on. Find out about the country's subcultures and any special rules of managing administration and protocoling. In the following video, dear participants, you will try to learn much more information about culture and cultural markers.
What is culture? LeBaron and Pillay, who edited Conflict Across Cultures, defined culture as: culture is the shared, often unspoken, understanding in a group. It is a series of lenses that shape what we see and what we don't see, how we perceive and interpret, and where we draw our boundaries. Often invisible to us, culture shapes our ideas of what is important, influences our attitudes and values, and animates our behavior. Each one of us belongs to multiple cultures. Culture is shared within a generation, or people who live through a particular time and experience a certain period of social change together. Gender and how you identify it is part of your makeup. We learn how to be men or women or transgendered in our culture. Our languages instill aspects which can unite or divide us within a culture. Religion, politics, economic status, the countries we live in are all part of our culture. Each one of us is a blend of national, regional, ethnic, racial, gendered, educational, social, generational cultures, and no two people are exactly the same. Cultural theorists share some understandings about the definition of culture. First, culture is learned. Think about how young children have to be taught culturally appropriate behavior when it comes to eating, sleeping, being a boy or being a girl. We're even taught how to express love. A Canadian might feel comfortable showing affection to a loved one in public. A person from Japan may be more restrained in displaying public affection. Culture involves perception and values. How we see the world, and then how we interpret and organize our experience is also a function of culture. This is largely an unconscious process. What we value, for example, being connected to our family, our definition of success, are examples of how culture informs our values. Culture involves feelings. When we feel comfortable in our surroundings and or the people we are with, it is an expression of our culture. For example, many Canadians like to have a large personal space around being physically close to other people, which might be a reflection of growing up with a lot of space in their environment. Someone from India, for example, might feel more comfortable when in close quarters with other people because they might have grown up with less physical space around them. Culture is shared. This means a group of people share values, perceptions, and learning, and they are likely to share a special relationship with other members of the group versus members outside of their group. Culture is expressed as behavior. A North American trait is to believe in independence and individualism. This might mean that a young person is more likely to move away and pursue a career path that might take them far away from their family. Collectivist cultures place more value on caring for family members or members of their group, and are more likely to consult their family or take them into consideration before making any career or major life decisions. Culture is dynamic. Culture is always changing. It also means that just because someone appears to belong to one culture, they might not identify with that group. To summarize, culture is complex, often unseen, affecting our inner and outer experiences of the world. Culture is like a tapestry. So many different threads make up one picture. When thinking about intercultural aspects in the workplace, it then becomes very important for us to consider the different aspects of our own unique cultural makeup. Our cultural layers and lenses affect our expectations, our definitions about what is right and wrong, and also our behaviors in relationships.
Hope you have had a lot useful information about culture and its markers. Okay, so now we have come to the effective communication part of our lecture. Effective communication is getting message across as intended and getting desired. Feedback by influencing and attracting attention. Communication is not only to receive information, but it is also to understand the intention behind the message. Full meaning of the message has to be conveyed using skills which includes verbal, nonverbal, or written communication. Communication is a two-way process. Feedback and interactions are processes to know if communication process has been successful or not. Listening is another aspect of effective communication. People should not only learn to say what is needed effectively and assertively, but also they should listen and understand what the other person or party is saying. Effective communication is required to change the other's behaviors, create a perception on anything, and get information from somebody else. And as a conclusion of this part, let's have a look at how effective communication is done in action.
We all use words and language every day to interact with people at work. But do we really communicate effectively? Effective communication can be broken down into three parts: listening, understanding, and responding. Let's look at these one by one. Listening involves hearing the words that are being said, taking in nonverbal cues such as body language and facial expressions, plus paying attention to voice modulation. We then move on to the next stage: understanding or giving meaning to what we have heard. Most communication breakdowns happen at this stage because we often misunderstand or misinterpret what is being said. When we make errors in interpretation, we are likely to respond incorrectly as well. For example, your boss asks you if the task that he assigned to you has been completed. If you interpret that as the boss blaming you for not completing the task, you are likely to respond with anger. However, if you interpret that as your boss wanting to just know the status of the task, you are likely to feel less angry and defensive. How we interpret what we hear is affected by the thoughts that pop up in our minds when we are listening. At Way Forward, we help you catch these automatic thoughts so you can reduce communication errors and be more productive at work. For more information,
So thanks for enjoying the video about effective communication. So the participants, we have come to the last part of the today's lecture, which is called the iceberg model of culture. As it given in the video, the posture describes us or gives the picture or silhouette or sign of the iceberg. So the part which is on the water surface is called top of the iceberg, which is observable behaviors, practices, and discourse, the way we do things around here. And under the water or under the water line, uh, we can see the underlying beliefs, attitudes, values, philosophies, and taken for granted aspects of workplace. In an attempt to explain culture more clearly, many intercultural trainers use this iceberg model of culture. When delivering cross-cultural training programs such as working successfully across cultures or developing intercultural competence. So why culture is often compared to an iceberg? Because both visible on the surface and invisible below the surface parts are elements of culture which we can plainly see, and such as food or clothes are represented by the upper portion of the iceberg. Those elements which are not as obvious, such as why someone eats or dresses the way they do, are represented by the much larger portion of the iceberg underwater. In an iceberg, only about 10% of the iceberg is visible above the waterline. The majority of the iceberg is hidden beneath the surface. In 1976, Edward Hall suggested that culture was similar to an iceberg. He proposed that culture has two components and that only about 10% of culture, or external or surface culture, is easily visible. The majority of 90% of culture is hidden below the surface. So, external surface culture consists of behaviors, customs, easily observable with touch, taste, smell, and sound. And it is explicitly learned, and it is conscious, easily changeable, objective knowledge. The internal or deep culture consists from 90% of iceberg, which include itself core values, beliefs, priorities, attitudes, assumptions, perceptions, difficult to observe. The list of such kind of difficult to observe values are endless, because we can learn about people, about culture, about country by studying, by living there, and with the help of our efforts, and by spending a lot of time. When one first enters into another culture, one is usually first interacting only with the top, with the 10% of the culture, literally the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes people make assumptions or develop ideas about another culture community without really understanding the internal or deep culture that makes up the majority of that culture's values and beliefs. Failure to understand and recognize these parts of culture and the layers that compose them, as well as how they influence each other, is the main reason misunderstandings occur when doing communication or business internationally. So, dear students, you can see that in our iceberg model, we have top surface and underlying surface. And on the top surface, there are only 10% of the values of one culture, and the other 90 is hidden here. So they are mostly unspoken rules. They can be unconscious rules completely below sea level, emotions, feelings, or taboos, or something like that. So we have come to the end of our lecture. Thanks for attending. I hope you have enjoyed my lecture. Leave your comments. See you. Bye bye.